This is a Mini Cooper S, and today I'm going to tell you why it works for me, and it might well work for you too. I'm Chris, and this is Karanga Cars. Every car is a compromise, and this one's no different. Whether you're compromising on performance, space, comfort, functionality, the size, practicality, cost even, there's always give or take with a car. And trying to find the right compromise for you, the car that fits your needs as well as your wants, can often be a difficult thing. This car is important to me because for the last 7 years, this has been my family car. It might not work for you, but with us having a small family, just myself, my wife, and my nearly teenage daughter, I'm gonna hopefully demonstrate why this was the compromise that I made and why you might consider looking at one too. The third generation Mini, known as the F50 series, launched in 2014 and is still made effectively to this day, with even the current model being heavily based upon this model. In fact, if you take the tour of the factory down in Oxford, what you'll see is that these body shells come out still with F50 designations on them, which I think is quite incredible. Over 10 years later, still using effectively the same body shell, albeit the lights and all the kind of panels around it have changed shape. This particular car is a 2016 car, and as I say, this model came out in 2014, so actually this is still coming up for 10, 12 plus years old. Yeah, I think that's quite incredible. These are obviously very common cars, and I think that's for the better. It means that it's much easier to find one in a specification that you might like. And whilst I wouldn't say it's a particularly pretty car, it definitely has sporting credentials, it definitely has that retro style, and it stands out among all of the regular looking hatchbacks that you have nowadays. And yeah, as I say, not pretty necessarily, but I think it's quite a cool car, especially as a daily runner or a family car. It might not be as dynamic as something like a Fiesta ST or a Civic Type R, but it also brings with it some other balances in that compromise. I think it might be better built, or it might be more reliable, it might be more affordable. Well, these are all the questions that you have to answer when you're shopping for something like a family car. And unlike my real preference in cars, well, a family car always has to have back seats. There's no getting away from that. Of course, there is a little secret here. The F56 Mini is a 3-door variety, and in reality, as a family car, it doesn't really suit all that much. This is an F55 Mini. It has back doors, it adds 16 centimeters in length, and that length is added in the wheelbase. With the extra wheelbase that we have in this F55 5-door model, we can fit an adult in the back. It's probably not the comfiest thing in the world. I'd probably say a small adult really is where you want to be. But it's great for children, and that's why it's suited us so well. This is not just a mini hatch, this is a Mini Cooper S. That's the top flight model, well, apart from the hotter cooking models like the John Cooper Works and the GPs that come above it. The cost differential between a Cooper and a Cooper S these days isn't actually all that much, and the Cooper S brings with it quite a lot more, both in specification and also in performance. Under the bonnet we have BMW's twin-power turbo unit. It's used in the Mini and a series of BMWs as well. It's an inline-4 2-litre engine, and it produces somewhere around 200 horsepower depending on the variant, and around 300 newton meters of torque. In this particular car it's about 192 horsepower, and that's good enough to take the car to 60 miles an hour in under 7 seconds and onto a top speed of something like 145 miles an hour. For a small family hatchback that could be used in the school run, I think that's absolutely more than adequate. All the engines, including this one and the F series of Minis, I think were introduced as a response to the Prince engines that were notoriously unreliable in the second series of BMW Minis. This particular engine doesn't seem to have any foibles like the previous one. It's really unlikely that you're going to end up with a car that's written off due to needing massive repairs, as was seen on the previous engine car. These are solid, they're torquey, they're not the most characterful engines, but from a reliability perspective, for a day-to-day runner, I think they're fantastic. The twin power moniker right up here on the plastic cover on top of this somewhat uneventful looking engine is what many use to describe the twin scroll turbo. Another piece of technology that's used to try and reduce the turbo lag that you have in modern turbo cars. The bonnet itself is a massive thing, as you can see, incorporating, well, the wings, but not the lights. Slightly unusual design, but never mind. Sport mode in this car, activated through the dial by the gear stick, allows us to sharpen up the throttle response, which helps to reduce the feeling of that turbo lag. The engine isn't particularly characterful. It's reliable and robust, but really the torque is its one party trick. And that torque comes in really low down, as low as 1,250 RPM, and it sticks with us in a really flat curve all the way up to about 5,000 RPM. It's not a particularly great sounding engine either. In fact, when I first drove one of these, starting it from cold, I thought it was a diesel. Once you get going, it doesn't sound too bad, but from the outside it can get a little bit monotonous. This is all helped on a little bit, whether you like it or not, by BMW's active sound design, which basically puts large kind of heavy bass speakers right under the seat of the car. And what those do is they simulate engine noise with the car, emphasized when it's in sport mode, to help it sound kind of a lot better than it actually does. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It does help the car sound better from the inside, whilst also allowing them to meet modern standards and not make it too loud from the outside. But it does sound fun when you're in the cabin. Like it or not, along with those somewhat emphasized engine tones comes somewhat emphasized turbo noises as well, especially again in sport mode where they're emphasized all the more. You can hear the turbo spooling up and you can hear the blow-off valve as well as you're driving along. You get some pops and bangs from it too. And while you're never really certain what is real engine and what is synthesized noise, personally, I don't think it really makes a huge amount of difference. It adds to the fun character of the car, and realistically, it also means you can have a cabin that's pretty well sound insulated, so you don't hear all that much noise from the outside. Mini is all about styling, and lots of those features still continue from Alex Sysogonis' original designed Mini that came out in 1959. These round headlights and the bulbous, curvy nature of the body continues, as well as some other bits that's picked up along the way. We've got contrasting roof, in this case it's a red car with a black roof, and usually bonnet stripes as well, although mine were starting to break up, so these were removed quite recently. I kind of think it misses it, but never mind. This grille shape with the sort of hockey stick ends on it, I think is quite akin to the Mark II onwards original Mini. Again, continuing that styling feature that came on into what is basically one of the most retro-focused modern cars. Down the side of the car, the sporting credentials continue with the JCW pack. We get these fantastic looking side skirts, which I think really set up an otherwise bland side of the car. Again, we hark back to original Mini styling with these chrome door handles and the chrome trim that sits around. Lots of people change these to black. Personally, I quite like the little bit of chrome in it. I don't think there's a lot of modern cars that can pull it off, but with a retro style and something like this, I think it works really well. We've also got these plastic, well, they look like arch extensions from the Rover days, but in reality, they're actually just the wings. It goes back to that kind of 80s and 90s appearance of some of the later model Minis. And I think it goes well with these track spoke alloys that are added again with that JCW pack. Along with the contrasting roof, we get contrasting mirrors as well. And the S model, of course, has these little S badges on the side, which on my particular car have faded back to silver, but originally would have been red. As we move into the side profile of the car, we do have the extra wheelbase that gives us these back doors. Unfortunately, compared to the 3-door F56 model, you do lose the frameless windows, which I think is a real disappointment. We've got traditional frames around the windows of both the front and the back doors, and this pillar in the middle, and all these rubber seals around the windows, I think kind of ruins the sideline of the car a little bit. The extra wheelbase might not be for you. It is something around 10 centimeters, I believe, but it does allow the back doors to be in, which then gives us space to get an actual adult in the back. Don't believe me? Well, let's give it a shot. And here we are. I might not have the most space, but I am about 6 foot, and if I sit back properly, I could say this is actually a relatively comfortable car. You might not want to do it for long distances, but for short distances, I think it's ideal. Moving around to the back of the car, and the JCW pack features continue. This rear bumper is specific to JCW cars, with the S having the centre exit exhaust. If you have a JCW car that's a Cooper, you'll see the difference because the exhaust is still off to one side. Single exit exhaust, I think, off to the left hand side where the Cooper gets the central one, but you still get these additional grills, etc., that I think hide the reversing sensors actually really well. We've got reversing sensors in both the black plastics here, and of course the same on the other side. I think well hidden rather than some cars where you see them kind of drilled into the body coloured parts of the plastic that looks really off-putting to me. Up top, we've got a lovely little hatch spoiler, which realistically isn't doing much, but it's adding to the styling. Again, I think enhanced for the JCW pack, although I think the standard Cooper has a slightly smaller spoiler. And we've got these lights. This is a pre-facelift version of the F50 Series Mini, and it comes with these fantastic looking lights, I think, with this round indicator in the middle, which actually has mini branding on it. The later cars, which came out in about 2018, start to bring in the Union flag style lights, which, as someone living in Scotland, I wasn't really all that interested in having on the back of my car, if I'm perfectly honest. I don't think they add anything to the car. I think these are much nicer, much more retro, and set off the curvy, bulbous nature of the car even more. The design features from the outside continue onto the inside of the car as well. We have this lovely circular dashboard up front, which harks back to the original Mark 1s where the speedometer would be present. Okay, in this car, it's not so much a gauge as an LCD screen for your infotainment unit, but I think the overall design is very much still there and continues through quite nicely. You can see right now on that center screen, I've got a little gauge there that's giving me the power and the torque settings, something that back in 1959, there's no way you were going to get from that old A-Series engine. The interior is a really nice place to be. We've got this beautiful leather steering wheel with lovely stitching. We've got John Cooper Works badges that come with the JCW pack. We've got this screen up front, which is part of what Mini called Visual Boost, something that I would recommend as an absolute minimum. We don't have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto in here at this point. That comes in later cars in the range. But we can play from a USB stick, which is located down in front of the gear stick. It will also play music off your phone via Bluetooth. We've got dual zone climate control, so your passenger can be a different temperature to you. It's relatively efficient. The aircon is good in these cars, and this car also has heated seats. We've got LED headlights up front, which are excellent, and I say a must if you're looking for one of these cars. They're automatic as well, as are the windscreen wipers. And one of the things that makes these cars so approachable, I think, is the amount of customization that was available from factory. This is something that Rover started in the 90s with the last models of the original Mini, where you could specify it with various different colours of leather interior, you could specify it with different kinds of decals on the roof or stripes on the bonnet and things along those lines. And that's something that BMW continued as they started the Mini with the R50 series, again back in 2000. That R50 series actually was a car that was developed by Rover. Perhaps could have been the car that saved Rover, and it's one of the reasons that BMW wanted to buy them in the first place. It would have been interesting to see what Rover would have made of that car. It would have been interesting to see if we ended up with the same kind of sales figures and if they still would have been around today. I think it's a real shame that Mini moved over to BMW, but I guess things like the build quality and the reliability that they've brought to these F50 series of Minis is something that maybe we would never have had with Rover. The steering on this car is both a pro and a con. The first time you step in the cabin, what you'll notice almost immediately is how chunky the steering wheel is. Or perhaps if you've driven a modern BMW, it's something that you'll be used to. The red stitching on the leather brings out a little bit of that sporting appeal. The steering is actually quite well weighted. Many modern cars try and isolate the driver by giving it really feather-like steering, but that's not the case here in the Mini. There's a good weight to the steering. Now, I'm not saying it's overly heavy, it absolutely isn't. It's still very easy for anyone to drive, but there's a nice weight to it, which lightens up a little bit as the car gains speed. It's reassuring, it feels sporty. The handling itself is excellent. The car will go exactly where you point it. Well, that's when it's not torque steering. At that point, it's going where it wants to go. For me, I think it just adds a little bit to the urgency of the car, a little bit more to the fun. In terms of road feel, well, that's the biggest con of the handling. I've mentioned the torque steer already, which does pull the car in various different directions. But really the biggest miss for me is the lack of feel. With that more weighted steering and this big chunky steering wheel, you think that the car would be communicating with you. You think it would be telling you where the road is going and what that means. But in actual fact, what happens is it feels a little bit numb. Sure, you can tell what the car's doing and where it's going to go, but personally, I would much rather there was a little bit more feel to it. And that continues as we move on to the brakes. This particular car doesn't have the big brake option, which I believe was available on some cars, and it always feels a little bit under braked. You feel you need to work the brakes a bit harder than you want to, and that's not really in keeping, for me at least, with the torque that we're getting from the engine and the response from the steering. We've got highly responsive steering, we've got highly responsive throttle, and we've got sort of in the middle brakes that feel like they can always do with a little bit more shove than you're giving them. This particular car is spec'd with the JCW pack, which gives it 17-inch track spoke alloy wheels. Those wheels at 17 are not the biggest wheels you can put on this car, and I urge you not to put bigger wheels than that on this car. As well as that, when I bought this car, I specifically looked with one that had the tyre inflation pack in the boot. What that does is it means when it left the factory in Oxford, the run flats were deleted. It came on regular tyres, and those improve the handling. You don't have that extra stiff tyre wall to go with it. And in terms of tyres, I do feel that these cars are very tyre sensitive. I've run this car on Michelin's, it's been on Pirelli's, and the best tyres that I have found by far are the Goodyear Eagle F1s that I have on it right now. None of that numbing of the ride that you get with run flats, and excellent performance in both the wet and the dry. The wet performance is something you might want to consider as well. As I say, the car suffers quite a lot from torque steer, as you'd imagine that any front-wheel drive, relatively lightweight car would, with approaching 200 horsepower. And of course, as you go into wet conditions, that just means it's like more and more likely to spin up the wheels. So having a tyre that can perform in the wet is probably more important than you'd think. Those 17-inch wheels also help to reduce the unsprung weight, and deleting the run flats also helps the ride quality to be better. And the ride is actually of quite a nice quality. I can't remember if it's the JCW or the Chili pack that adds sport suspension. Now, it's not active suspension, it's still a passive system, but for me, it's actually incredibly compliant. It doesn't roll too much in the corners, and as you find potholed roads, it actually rides along quite nicely. Sure, it's no luxury car, it's a sporty hatch, it's not supposed to be. It rides just as you want it to ride. It's not uncomfortable, it's not shaking you around all over the place. It feels quite civilized, a little grown up even, but it doesn't really take away from that handling experience. It might not have the driving dynamics of a Fiesta ST, it might not have the build quality that you'd get from a Polo, but it has a lot more fun to it. It has some nicer materials and some styling that you just don't get with those cars. And it's practical enough, and maybe that's where the compromise comes in the most. The gearbox is a 6-speed manual in this, and it feels pretty good. It's quite clearly a cable operated system, but the gear shifter has a nice positive feel to it. It's very difficult to miss a gear or to select the wrong gear, and there is a nice positive feel that you don't get with a lot of cars. I know as of 2024 that many have now dropped that manual gearbox, and for me that's a real shame. It adds to the fun of the car, and having driven an earlier version of the 7-speed dual clutch box that I believe is in the current Mini, I wasn't all that impressed. Reviews all say that it increases driving engagement, but for me it really didn't, it detracted from it. The control comes from a couple of plastic buttons behind the steering wheel, and as a sim racer I know that if you take something that's metal and give a little bit more clunk to it, it feels a lot more engaging. But really the issue for me was simply the way that the gearbox selected gears. It always felt reluctant to shift down when you wanted it to, leaving you stuck in a higher gear where you really wanted to be accelerating off using that engine's torque. And also at slower speeds, it always felt a little bit clunky. I've heard that in sport mode those issues are resolved, but the car that I drove unfortunately had that mode omitted. That gear shift rev matches as well. When you dip the clutch and move the gear stick, the revs pop up a little bit, giving it a little blip to make sure that your shift is a little bit smoother. I think it's emphasised in sport mode as well. And all this in a family hatchback? torque is this engine's best secret. And whilst it does encourage that torque steer that we have so frequently, especially with bigger, heavier wheels, as you pull out of a corner, the car just wants to pull you forward until you reach the next one. And then it eggs you on to do the same again next time. A little bit of torque steer kicking in there as the tyres scramble a little bit for grip. The only real issue, and I guess the thing that makes it less characterful, is it's not a very revvy engine. Once you get to about 5,000 RPM, the torque curve starts to tail off, and so does the performance. It's not a car for revving out. You're not going to be pushing it to the red line all the time. You're going to be more likely to short shift it and ride that torque curve instead. I've spoke about sport mode. Perhaps it's worth talking about the other things that Mini dubs driving excitement. The car defaults to what he calls mid mode, typical Mini driving fun. And as soon as you engage sport mode, the screen in the center changes to tell you that you've engaged maximum go-kart feel. There's green mode as well, which is great for entertaining your kid for about 5 minutes. It displays a picture of a Mini on the screen with a goldfish bowl on the top. And the idea is that you try and keep the fish happy by not shaking it around too much, presumably hinting that you're driving in a more economical manner. Realistically, it makes the car slow and sluggish, and beyond that, there's no real gain. The amount of fuel you're likely to save is absolutely minuscule as well. So personally, once you've used it for that 5 minutes to entertain your kid, turn it off and never turn it on again. So what do you think about a look at this car? Please drop a comment down below to tell me that I'm a crazy fool for thinking that this car is a good looking, out of the ordinary, and interesting daily use car. Am I absolutely insane? Should I have just gone for something a little more mainstream, a little more normal, or would you also be looking at one of these as a daily running car? If it's a car that you've even remotely considered, I urge you to go out and give one a test drive. I suspect you might well be surprised. For a car this common, for a car that you can see in basically every street in the country, I think it's actually a very good car. It might not be an excellent car, but sometimes that doesn't really matter. As I said right up front, every car is a compromise, and they all meet the needs of the compromises in very different ways. And this was one of the ways that I thought the compromise could be met. With the style and features, going back to those original Minis, whilst I don't really see it as a replacement for what was the classic Mini, I think it does well. It's built in the image, it takes lots of little stylish features, brings in some quirks of its own, such as the center exit exhaust, the vent up front, and I think it does it in a package that's just about the right size and is actually really nicely made. And there we have it. Mini screams fun, fun, fun right from the off. And this might not be something that you're interested in as a daily car, but for me, this one ticked all the right boxes. Would you make the same choice for your daily? Is a Mini a car for you? Let me know in the comments section below. And while you're at it, hit that like button and please subscribe to my channel. It's really cool when I see the number flying up there as more and more people subscribe. It does give me a bit of a buzz.